housing, winning nearly 70% of the electoral vote. He currently represents the 7th Senatorial District in Virginia Beach, having won re-election in 2003 and 2007. Prior to his election to the state Senate, Frank served in the Virginia House of Delegates for over a decade, representing the 21st District in Virginia Beach. During his tenure in the House of Delegates, Frank served on several committees, including Conservation and Natural Resources, Corporations, Insurance and Banking, Education, Finance, General Laws, and Militia and Police. Currently, he serves on the Senate Commerce and Labor, General Laws, Rehabilitation and Social Services, and Transportation Committees. He served on the Governor's Commission on Climate Change and the Virginia Attorney General's Regulatory Reform Task Force. Frank also serves as the chairman of the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules, chairman of the Virginia Manufacturing Development Commission, and is a member of the Virginia Coal and Energy Commission and the Virginia Advisory Council on Career and Technical Education. He also serves as an ad hoc member of the Virginia Coastal Energy Research. Frank is best perhaps known for his visionary Virginia Energy Plan, legislation that passed in the 2006 Virginia General Assembly session. This legislation directs the Commonwealth to create a comprehensive plan for the development of energy resources, including clean coal, oil, natural gas, wind, solar, tide, current, geothermal, nuclear, alternative fuels, coupled with conservation and energy efficiency. Frank Wagner is a 1977 U.S. Naval Academy graduate, receiving a B.S. in Ocean Engineering. He served in the United States Navy as a diving and engineering officer. After his service in the Navy, Frank went into business with his father and started a ship repair firm, Earl Industries in Portsmouth, Virginia. Today, he's the president of the Davis Boat Works Incorporated, one of Virginia's premier small boat repair yards, located in Newport News. In his spare time, Frank enjoys golfing, diving, camping, theater, and playing the piano. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Senator from the 7th District, Frank Wagner.
Thank you, Ken. I'm suitably embarrassed. I guess if you got a job long enough, you build up a resume. But it's been 20 years, and it's been a great ride, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all my time in the legislature, and I'm still honored and proud and feel privileged that you all give me the honor to serve you up in the Virginia General Assembly. And you know, I don't know how many of y'all read the front page of the Hampton Roads section of the ballot today. I'm very, very concerned because Occupy Virginia Beach cannot get the permits they need to occupy Virginia Beach. So I put a call in the very night. I think we can find 10 acres down at a pig farm. We can set them up to occupy Virginia Beach down there, and they can move ahead with their demonstrations and move forward with it. But let me just kind of backtrack and tell you, and I'm here to talk to you today about what's going to go down on Tuesday, or what we hope goes on Tuesday, and kind of give you a little reflection, because I know many of you have actually been involved in politics longer than I have in this particular area. But I'll take you back 20 years ago today, 20 years ago today, and we were, at the time that we had Bob Tata and Bob Perky were the only elected Republicans in Virginia Beach, and the rest of the seats were held by Democrats around the entire city of Virginia Beach. And about 4 days later, at a Tuesday from 20 years ago, it was a totally different city. You had one Democrat senator and one Democrat delegate out of the entire delegation left, and all of us came into office. But the race that I'll always remember next to mine, which is always, you know, a little self-centered, but it's politics, is Bob McDonald's. Because Bob McDonald, I believe, won by 22 or 24 votes. And he took out a 22-year incumbent member of the House of Delegates, and came on to Richmond. I can remember Bob showed up with his beautiful wife, you know, half a dozen daughters, and two parcels in a package. There's twin sons for going around during orientation, and we knew Bob was special. We knew he was a great man. We didn't know what kind of leader he was till we saw him in action on the floor of the House of Delegates, and the amount of legislation he put in, and how hard he worked, and his work ethic, and all of that. And I think all of us knew Bob was going to destined for higher office. But I want you to reflect back, for those of you particularly who were here 20 years ago, the amount of work that you put in that allowed Bob McDonald to get that 22 votes he needed to start his political career. And the reason I kind of reflect back on that is I want to bring you forward now, to where Bob McDonnell is and what we need to do to get Bob McDonnell, because I'm absolutely convinced that every day, more and more, the more I see going on in Washington, that the sooner we get rid of Bob McDonnell and get him up in Washington, the better off this country's going to be. And right now, he's our governor. You know what? I'm willing to give him up because I know Bill Bowling, and Bill Bowling can do a great job as governor. But we need to get Bob up there, and hopefully it'll not be in the too distant future that we're allowed to do that. But the last thing keeping Bob from completing his agenda, his pro-business, pro-job, less government agenda in Virginia, is the Senate of Virginia. And right now, the Senate of Virginia is composed of 22 Democrats and 18 Republicans. We have a full court press going on around the state to ensure that we take the majority, or at least come up to 2020 where Bill Bowling can break a tie in the Senate of Virginia and move the rest of Governor McDonnell's agenda forward. And while you'll listen to the Democrat ads saying we cooperated with Bob McDonnell, we worked in a bipartisan manner, we did that, nothing could be further from the truth. I wish you could just flash back and listen to the floor debates last session and all the things that went on, the number of bills that Bob had that were important parts of the agenda that died in the Senate of Virginia, the number of bills that came out of the House of Delegates representing very conservative measures that I think most in this room would support that died in the Senate of Virginia. And that's what we're trying to reverse. That's what we're trying to stop. We're trying to complete the McDonnell agenda, which I think is our agenda and just about everybody in this room's agenda. It's less government, more efficient government, and a government that recognizes that minimal amount of regulation to ensure public safety is what's required, but to create that fertile environment, to create that soil, to allow seeds of job growers to grow their businesses in Virginia and create the jobs. Because we recognize, and I know the Governor McDonnell recognizes, government is not a job creator. The function of government is to create an environment where job creators can create jobs. Exactly what is not going on in Washington. And so the governor has raised a tremendous amount of money. We have, the Senate Republican Caucus has raised a tremendous amount of money, and Republican organizations outside of Virginia have also contributed to this particular effort to try to get us to 20 or 21 members. And so I kind of like to give you a brief review. What will we do in this area? Well, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my protege. If you listen to my resume, you'll hear I represented the 21st District for 10 years, and now my protege's represented Ron Villanueva, landslide Ron, I'd like to call him. He won by even less of a margin than Bob McDonnell won when he ran for the House of Delegates. But I think Bob's looking pretty good, and I mean, Ron's looking very good right now. We need to do everything we can in this city to make sure that Ron gets reelected and gets back up there. We're not going to be in danger of losing the House of Delegates. In fact, as I look around the state, we may pick up a few more seats in the Virginia House of Delegates, which would be very, very encouraging. But again, back to the Senate and focusing on that. We've got to do everything we can, and unfortunately here in Virginia Beach, we only represent one small part. I think it's half of Chicks Beach now that's actually in the city of Virginia Beach that represents the 6th Senatorial District, which is the one that Ben Loyola is running for, which is primarily the city of Norfolk, the Eastern Shore, Matthews County, half of Chicks Beach, and I think that's it. But it is a conglomerate, it is a mix. Ben is running a valiant campaign. We are very hopeful on his prospects, and it's key that Republicans turn out. The next race I want to talk about is the one, and many of you all know Lucille, and I had a few questions. Where's Lucille this morning? That's my fiance. Lucille's on her way right now over to host a breakfast for Vicki Chohan over on the peninsula with a bunch of women. It's totally a women's event over there. And she's doing, and a lot of us are doing everything we can to help out Mickey Chohan. He's running against John Miller. If you haven't watched TV, then you have no idea of the fireworks going on. But if you bother to even turn on your TV, you know all about the fireworks going on over in the peninsula. It is an ugly race. It is a vicious race, but it is one that's very, very important. And the last polling data I saw suggests it's very, very winnable. And we're looking forward to taking that seat back. It was formerly represented by Senator Williams. He lost in a primary battle. The person that beat him in the primary ultimately lost the general election, and so that seat's been held by Democrats. During redistricting, the Democrats did everything they could to turn it into more of a Democrat district. I don't think it's going to work. And not to leave out another race where traditionally we wouldn't hold any hope, but over in Mamie Locke's district, which is the city of Hampton, part of the city of Newport News, is a gentleman named Thurman, Tom Thurman, that is running a great, or Tom Herman, I'm sorry, that's running a great campaign over there. And Mamie needs to be very, very careful, because the reason John Miller's district got very Democrat is Mamie gave up a bunch of her district over to John Miller to try to make it more Democrat during the redistricting process. Remember, Republicans had no say in this redistricting process. And so, you know, there's always that sneaker, there's always that one you suspect when we wake up Wednesday morning, we're going to go, wow, what an interesting race. We have a 26-year incumbent in Caroline County and Spotsylvania County and that area. Goes all the way out near Charlottesville and that kind of area. A guy named Ed Houck, who I would submit to you as the primary governor's nemesis up there. He's certainly a major proponent of bigger government. Can't get enough money. Can't grow government enough. He is the master at, this year we got it done with $10 budget. We're hoping for a $14 budget, so we put a $14 budget in. Oops, we only raised $12. Ergo, we had to cut $2, as opposed to, you know, you raised 20% the cost of the previous year. And he is a master at that. He has been one of the primary spokesmen on the floor, and he is in trouble out there. We have a gentleman named Bryce Reeves that is running one heck of a campaign against him, and a lot of money is being poured in, and we're very, very hopeful out there. A very, very interesting race. Go around a little further, Franklin County, Pittsylvania, Martinsville, South Side Virginia, basically. A gentleman named Roscoe Reynolds, who I've served with in the House of Delegates for a number of years and now in the Senate. It is a Republican-leaning district. They combined two of our incumbents, the Democrats did, around the Roanoke area in Franklin County into one district. So we had a senator walk away from the seat and walk into the other district, and has got it even, or actually he's ahead by a point or two in the latest polls, and one of those that definitely we have to win. They created two new seats as a result of population shifts that were unavoidable. As you might imagine, Northern Virginia is where they're at. There was a former member of the House of Delegates named Dick Black in parts of Loudoun County and Prince William County. He is way ahead in the polls, and that seat was a Republican seat and will retain and remain a Republican seat. There's another one that's a very, very interesting race that's outside the Richmond area. It actually runs all the way to Lynchburg, kind of down the 64 corridor, Louisa County, Goochland, all of those areas. The Democrats, a fellow named Dodson. You might know the name if you looked at pest control companies and all the Dodson, you know, exterminators and all of those kind of things. He's a well-financed candidate. One we were concerned about, but one of the latest polls suggest we're going to win and hold. That would be a Republican seat that needs to retain Republican seat. That, in fact, would have been Fred Quayle's seat that was erased in our area and gone. Going up to Northern Virginia, there's a gentleman you may remember, some with respect, some with a little bit of consternation, but nevertheless, he was the former head of the Republican Party in Virginia, a gentleman named Jeff Frederick, who was a member of the House of Delegates. He is chosen to run against Toddy Puller in the area around Mount Vernon, northern parts of Prince William County and the Mount Vernon area of Fairfax. He's got that race up to a dead heat right now. There's David Nutter, who gave up his House of Delegates seat, a safe House of Delegates seat around the Blacksburg, Christiansburg area, Roanoke, parts of Roanoke, to run against Johnny Edwards. And that race is a dead heat. And we have another gentleman running against Phil Puckett, who's been there as long as I've been there, or actually got there a little bit later. But and you're talking about Buchanan County, coal country, best I can describe it. Grundy, those areas out there. Phil Puckett's problem was he took hand in hand three years ago. A fellow named Barack Obama around all the coal country and said, "This is our man. You know, we've got to support Barack and put him up there." And Barack almost put the coal people out of business over there. And our candidate out there was reminding everybody out there in coal country just what Phil Puckett has done to them, introducing them. And we're very, very encouraged by those seats around Roanoke. If you remember, they had a 22-year incumbent that the former majority leader in the House of Delegates took out in a race, Morgan Griffith. Nobody thought Morgan could win, and Morgan won. So I'm very, very encouraged. And those are the races. When you do the polling, I mean, it's within 2 or 3 percentage points, but it's within 2 or 3 percentage points on about 8 or 9 races around the state. And so what it's really going to boil down to come Tuesday is who can turn out their support and who can get them to the polls. But then, you know, every election is always about can you get to the polls. And what I think and what I hope and what my gut instinct tells me is that Republicans are more motivated to go to the polls this year than the Democrats are. And I think the message that we have tried to instill across Virginia is let's send Barack Obama a message, and let's send it loud and clear from Virginia that Virginia is no longer a blue state or what they call a purple state. That it is, we had a one-time blue, and it's back to being a solid Republican state, and we're going to move forward with it. So it's with great expectations that we all look forward to this. Obviously the governor's got a lot of issues he wants to tackle. The governor does not want to leave open the transportation issue like previous governors have left open before, without solutions and real solutions to solving the funding problems we have in transportation. There's a number of issues that will come up across the board, and I wouldn't go into them. But what I'd like to do now, what I always do when I do these things, is short, hot questions. Throw them at me from any direction, and be happy and delighted to answer them. You know, if you ask an energy question, we'll be here all morning. So, you know, but feel free to ask anything you'd like, particularly the high school students and the students are there. I'd love to hear from them and try to answer some of their questions.
We'll start right here, Frank.
All right.
Good morning, Frank.
Good morning.
Bayside.
Sure.
What is the plan of action? As you well know, there's only 2 projects that can really propel job creation in the Commonwealth of Virginia: offshore drilling and the wind project. And I understand there was a symposium in Maryland last night that identified permits and regulations as a stifling process on our job creation efforts. What's the state doing?
There's very little the state can do. Once you leave 3 miles off the coast of Virginia, you're not in Virginia any longer. You're not in Kansas anymore. You're in U.S. property, not the state of Virginia. So we have no control beyond 3 miles of what goes on out there. Quite frankly, to answer your question, the state of regulations is a turmoil. We were literally, would be 6 months away from a lease auction for oil and gas had Obama administration not canceled the lease sale last year, shortly after the Gulf of Mexico incident. Canceled it. Didn't postpone it, didn't delay it, didn't further study it, but canceled it outright, which means we're right back to square one again. We've gone through 6 years of exhaustive environmental studies, working with the Navy, working with all the concerned parties about where, when, how, under what conditions, where it can be done, where it won't interfere with Navy operations. I mean, they had 40,000 acres identified, they had another 40,000 where subsea could go on, but they didn't want anything above the water. All of those things had transpired. We were this close to Interior putting out a lease auction sale, only to have the Obama administration cancel it. We're right back to square one. Wind is even in greater turmoil, although everybody was anticipation in the next week, the next 2 weeks. I had reporters call me, come on, what do you really know? What do you really know? And is Interior going to announce the lease sale and all of that kind of stuff? And I said, you know, I've heard rumors just like you have, but I haven't heard. And that was 4 weeks ago. It was a week away. They have totally rewritten the regulations. They claim they're trying to fast track it. For those that have had an opportunity to sit in some of their meetings, it's the most frustrating thing. You have every federal government agency, just about everyone I can think of, that ultimately thinks they have veto power over anything off the coast of Virginia. Obviously, DOD we're very, very concerned about. We don't want to put up windmills or anything else in areas that they're going to be operating unmanned aircraft or, you know, interfering with you know, some of the things that go on off the coast of Virginia. But I mean, you got fish and wildlife, you got, you know, bird people, you got EPA, you got the whole, you name it, it's a federal alphabet of soup. And every one of those agencies, every one of those bureaucrats thinks they have veto power over what's going on. You know, I have a bill drafted right now that sometimes I draft them in a peak of anger and then reflect later on whether I want to put it in or not. But I got it drafted right now. It says any bureaucrat who exceeds his regulatory or legal authority in the administration of his duties can be held personally and financially liable for his actions. Now, I'm I'm sifting through that right now, but it's, I'm kind of going through it, but every alphabet soup of associations that are impacted by out of control bureaucrats have given me the big old thumbs up. So we need to define it. Obviously, we don't want to capture law enforcement, a bunch of other folks, in it. So teachers and all those kind of things. So we're kind of trying to define the audience right now, and I don't know if I'll float it this year or not, but I'll certainly float the concept and idea out there, if nothing else, to send a signal that people ought to sit back and do those kind of things. So, but to tell you something, I'm just not very encouraged about what's going on. I will be much more encouraged come a year from now if we find out we got a change in administration. If we don't, I'll be so discouraged, and it won't be just about offshore energy for a number of reasons. If the continuing administration goes back, it's another 4 years.
Next question is from Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Frank, the state amended the law several years ago to allow cities to engage in these public-private partnerships. Now what's happening is the city of Virginia Beach is circumventing their charter by using the development authority to issue debt, and the council just gives it an up or down vote. We haven't had a vote on a spending referendum in this city in I don't know how long. And so when you have the city basically circumventing the state law to appease their real base, which are the developer communities, and they're giving away land that belongs to the taxpayers, are there any plans in the state assembly to address that, so they have to put it back on a referendum, so they have to ask the taxpayers before they sink us with this debt?
Jimmy, I'm not aware of anything along those lines. I will note that Councilman Dyer's here and Louis Jones is here. If they'd be happy to shorten out that answer. Ken's got a portable microphone, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to pass them along and let them answer.
When in doubt, delegate.
You want to comment on that, Bobby, quickly?
I'll tell you, it's a tough one, and I'm sure that the vice mayor and probably a lot of folks in council, we just got to maybe do things different. And one thing we hope is that when we have a upcoming retreat coming in January, I believe that we talk about things like the legislative agenda and a number of other things, and actually just put some of these ideas on the table and just have an honest, open, and robust and transparent conversation on it.
Louis, my apologies. You want to say something?
Well, number one, I'm not aware of any land the city's given away. We do enter into public-private partnerships, but as far as giving away land, we haven't given any land away that I'm aware of. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, real quickly, welcome Vice Mayor Louis Jones, please. Next question, Frank, is from Skip.
Hey, Skip.
Hey, good morning, Frank. Thanks for coming in. I'd like to get your feelings on this light rail going from Norfolk to the beach. How do you feel about this? Is it a good idea? My personal feeling is it's not a good idea.
Let me just say this, that I'm skeptical. We let Norfolk take the lead in it. They chose to take the lead and try it out. I've been surprised to the point of almost being shocked about how much usage there is on that particular light rail system. I really thought it was a dead-end issue. I thought who's going to park at Newtown Road and ride downtown, but apparently a lot of people do it. I will say this, Skip, that we are doing something right now that I think makes it a time for us to revisit it, at least out to town center, city center, where we're at now, and that is the train station. The Amtrak train station that's going in at the ballpark down there. And that means that you can basically hop on board here, get somebody to drop you off here, and you can take the light rail down there, hop on a train, and go wherever the train goes. And we are working very, very hard and to ensure that we don't, as the high-speed rail comes on, that in fact that connector line, that was not thought of as a connector line, but it's thought of as part of the high-speed rail network. There's a tremendous amount of traffic, both military as well as civilian, that travels between Norfolk or Hampton Roads area and Washington, D.C. every day. For those that have not had the pleasure of driving to Washington, D.C. and needing to be there at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, I encourage you to try it sometime, and but leave about 3:30 in the morning if you hope to make it where it is you want to go. So, you know, as I look at things, and I'll say this, that the Census Bureau can reasonably tell us what Virginia is going to look like 50 years from now. Population-wise, demographic-wise, they can reasonably tell us with obviously a degree of inaccuracy, but with a relative certainty what we're going to look like 50 years from now. And I would submit to you that it's up to government to not only scratch the itch of today, but make sure that the way we scratch that itch helps to resolve problems 50 years down the road. So we're not reinventing the wheel, but we're building towards a broader plan that'll support it. And when I talk about 50 years from now, when I was, it was almost 50 years ago, when I was in elementary school in Virginia, Virginia had a population of 4 million people. And today, Virginia has a population of 8 million people. You know, how many high school classes, how many high schools are we going to need? If 50 years from now we're at 12 million. How many prisons are we going to need? How many highways are we going to need? Can we build highways, enough highways, to do, move 12 million people around? You know, all of those kind of things, I think, need to factor it in. So as we look at where we're at now and where we need to be, and obviously there's a subsidy associated with any public transportation system, but then, you know, one can make the argument there's a subsidy associated with a highway. The taxpayers built the highway too, so I mean, you know, you can maintain it. So I mean, you can fight the argument either way, but I think when you take a longer term view, in light of we've got the right of way, the city already owns that. The city has that. You know, we have a plan to further increase the population density around this particular area we're at right here today, right around City Center. That we ought not to walk away from it, Skip, that I think we've given all of those things happening, and the fact that we let Mikey try the MAPO first, Norfolk set the light rail up, and you know what Mikey appears to like, or so far the results appear to be that the light rail system is working. That may not be working so it's making a profit. No public transportation system ever makes a profit. But you know, we've moved forward with it. We have a guy there that has turned Hampton Roads Transit, and a big part of it, I believe, was the way HRT was managed up until this point, or mismanaged, as some might say. Phil Chouquette's done just a wonderful job of containing costs, turning the organization around, even to the point of saving millions of dollars. You have a handicap ride program. You've seen the little handicap ride buses that actually go to people's homes and pick them up. Huge cost. What they've done is said, you know what, we're going to do away with that, contract with a cab company, and save half our money, and provide actually a better service to those people within that community that can be served by that kind of transport. And they've cut their expenses down in half. And so, yeah, and I think at this point in time, it's something that we blanket walk away from. We see those results, and you know, it'd be kind of nice to be able to tie right in and do that. And I think if you take the 50-year broader view of where it is we need to be and start building towards that, that's for our kids and that's for our grandchildren. But you know, I'm just reflecting back. I can remember looking at my elementary school geography book, and Virginia had 4.084 million people or something like that, and now we're way over 8 million people in Virginia, and that trend's going to continue to grow. So I think we need to make press now, and we got a lot of transportation issues. Okay, light rail is not going to solve the biggest itch we got today, and that's trying to get back and forth to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. For those that, we don't have the problem nearly as bad on the south side as the people on the peninsula have, going the opposite direction. I see it every day. Every day it's backed up from Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel back to as far as Granby Street and beyond sometimes. So, yeah, Kevin.
Questions from Peggy?
Morning, Frank. Congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, thank you.
That's your question.
No, the uranium mine that they're building in Pennsylvania County, I think that's coming up in the General Assembly this year. Where do you stand on that? Good idea, bad idea? Because I think everybody in Virginia Beach should be concerned about it.
Okay, let me just tell you where we're at right now as opposed to where I'm at, okay? Because where I'm at right now is to wait for the results of the study that's being performed by the National Academy of Sciences. And you know, I I've been to uranium mines, I've been to milling operations now, I've been to shut down uranium mines, I've seen the process, and I still don't consider myself anywhere near being able to come up with a decisive decision myself, even with an engineering background. To give everybody in this room a little history lesson, and you know, sometimes I feel like everybody knows, but to go back, the issue came up of, are we going to lift the moratorium on uranium mining or not? And so we're like, we don't know. I mean, with the collective wisdom of the General Assembly, and some would say that's not a very big number, we recognize our deficiency there. So we said, we need somebody that is totally impartial, that has no axe to grind, that isn't pre-funded to come up with a certain decision, to come out and look at uranium mining in Virginia and tell us, A, can it be done safely, and B, under what conditions can it be done safely? But we said that study cost $1 million, and we're not going to take taxpayers' dollars to perform a study that would ultimately benefit a certain company that actually sits on the uranium deposits themselves. So we went to that company and said, totally unfettered, give us $1 million, we're going to do the study, or whatever the results are, we'll make our determinations after we get the results back. Once they agreed to do that, in principle, we held a series of public hearings with everybody, environmental groups, you name it, defining the parameters of that study. And we came up with 12 or 14 different parameters that we wanted the National Academy of Sciences to study. So we went through, and after exhaustive hearings, we actually said we don't trust ourselves to contract. So we went to Virginia Tech, said, Virginia Tech, will you contract for us? Because you do that kind of stuff all the time with, on science, technical, and engineering evaluations. They said, sure, we'd be delighted. So Virginia Tech took our 14 parameters, National Academy of Sciences came back and said, we'd like to change this, just the wording of this. We said, okay, that's fine. They also said it's not 1 million, it's 1.2 million. So they said, went back to the uranium company and said, 200,000 more. So they came up with the money. That's over there. That study is ongoing right now. The results of which are supposed to be out in the next 6 weeks. So we're 6 weeks away from getting the study. The question is, you're going to get a big report, and then you're going to ask us to act 3 weeks later in the General Assembly session. Throw in the Christmas holidays, and it's not going to be the reading I'm going to be doing over Christmas, I can assure you that. And so, I mean, it is a big report. We need time for the city to digest it. Lewis and I have talked about this in meetings. We need time for the city and the city engineers to digest the report. I'm certain, beyond certain, that there'll be a number of questions, a number of criticisms, a number of compliments, a number of, everything else that goes on that. I don't think we're in any position to act this legislative session, despite your comments right now, because you come out with this report literally 4 weeks before we go into session, and I just didn't think that it would be not prudent at all to move forward with legislation while this thing's still being diagnosed and picked apart. I will say also, and I don't know what the status of it is, but in tandem with this study, there's a socioeconomic study going on by another organization, the results of which I don't know where it could be turned into us, but equally as important in my mind as a technical study of whether it can be done safely or not. So that's the status of it, and I think I killed the question.
Okay, next question is from Sam Reed. Frank?
Yeah.
Morning, Frank. Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
My question is, do you support the constitutional amendment of the state Constitution supporting the property rights and strengthening the property rights of the owners as far as eminent domain goes?
Frank, before you answer that, quick announcement. Does someone own a red hybrid,
Honda.
Honda? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Frank.
Okay. I was hoping you say a Lamborghini or Maserati or something. I should say. Anyway, yeah, I supported it last year. I'll support it this year. I'll do 1 10-second answer. How's that? That would give relief to the entire crowd, I'm sure. So. That wasn't for the answer. That was for being 10 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry, Frank. Okay, next question's from Andy.
Yeah, Andy.
Senator, thank you very much for coming. Could you give us your thoughts on the diverting funds from 460 to Third Crossing, and whether that's a good idea? Because it seems like 460 relieves 64 in some way or not. I don't know, and I'd like your thoughts, please.
Well, let me just say this. Bob and Tom, I can't agree on everything, okay? And Bob's pet project, it's been 460. It's been 460 for a long time. Obviously, he's got the bully pulpit. You know, it's not my Secretary of Transportation, it's his, that type of thing. I've long been a champion of the third crossing for the exact same thing that I just said about 40 seconds ago. That traffic between Hampton Roads is basically just you know, DC's got nothing on us. Just because you don't drive it every day doesn't mean I don't see it every day. And you know, I experience it a little bit because I live in Virginia Beach and work in Newport News, but I see it every day. And all I can think of is this is just choking commerce down in our area. Now, you know, we've done a number of things. We've done a number of things in terms of double stacking. You see a lot more container traffic moving by rail. If you haven't been over the Western Freeway over in Portsmouth and seen the new rail lines going from the Mayor's Terminal out that will tie into Norfolk Southern and get the cargo out of here, we've done a number of things in those areas that will move forward. I am worried about, are you going to take 460 if you're going north, pay a $10 toll or whatever the toll is, or are you going to take 64 and be toll free? Or are you then you're going to toll 64? You know, but I'm all about expanding our port, obviously, and moving cargo out of here, obviously. But I'm also about moving people and moving infrastructure around within here. And I just happen to think that the higher priority right now is a scaled back version of the third crossing, because I've been involved with the third crossing for 12, 14 years, which probably speaks to my lack of legislative effectiveness, but since there's nothing happening, actually a lot's happened, but you know, it's scaled back to what now is called the Patriots Crossing, which is basically a pair of tunnels that go from the NIT, Norfolk International Terminals, Terminal Boulevard, if you're familiar, down by the naval base, up over, under the Elizabeth River, across the north end of Craney Island, with a T connector that goes past the east part of Craney Island, which would be the new expansion of the harbor, or the port, and then flares out and ties into the existing Monica Merrimack Tunnel, and gives an alternative to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. The original Patriots Crossing was about 4 times as big as that, and I could describe it to you if you really wanted to hear about it. But I just think that we're not going to get the usage out of 460 that we could, and quite frankly, you know, I just think widening 64 from the existing 4 lanes to 6 lanes probably would give us as much bang for the buck, particularly if we had alternatives to using the tunnel. So I just happen to think that would be good. But again, I'm not the governor, so the sooner we get into Washington, the better off we're all going to be.
Frank, next question from Chrissy.
Good morning, thanks for coming in. We're going to go back to this light rail thing.
Okay, Chrissy.
You said that it seems to be working, the ridership is better than they expected and all that. Have you looked at the ridership numbers compared to the fares actually collected? There is no way to guarantee that somebody is paying a fare. I understand that the transportation system is never going to make a profit. There's always going to have to be some sort of subsidy. But in a case like that, if you're not making people pay the fare, subsidy is not the word for it. So if you haven't looked at the numbers, you should.
And you know, I understand what you're saying, and you know, for the first 2 weeks it was free for everybody, and then what I read yesterday that students, TCC students and faculty would ride for free.
Everybody's riding for free.
Well, I believe TCC faculty and students somehow through TCC are going to reimburse HRT for the ridership. Okay, so that's a decision TCC made, that type of thing. So you know, I don't know. Lucille, she worked at Wells Fargo down there, was paying $60, $70, $80 a month to park down in Norfolk, and you know, the option open, I'm sure she would have rather paid, you know, a figure somewhat less than that and been able to ride and not have to worry about parking and doing that kind of stuff. But you know, no numbers are going to look good, particularly when you start up any organization, when you start up a business. I know very, very few businesses that turn a profit or do anything initially when they come out of the chute. What I said earlier in my comments is we're still in the evaluation process. I didn't say sign up for it, you know. I said it's subsidized. I don't want to sign up for something until I know how large the subsidy is going to have to be, you know. And and where is that money going to come from that would have gone to what else in terms of subsidizing something. But, you know, I said I wouldn't reject it or throw it out of hand simply because of what I see going on so far. And the fact we have a train station will open up that I think might open up some other opportunities. So at this point, let's see it. Hopefully from the effort that Norfolk's done, we can come up with a reasonable expectation of if we have, what's the question, if we have to subsidize it. If we have to what that level will it have to be subsidized, and where we're going to get money from. So I understand your inclination, but I just, you know, I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater at this point and say absolutely not, no way, that without getting some, you know, better numbers.
Next question, Frank, is from Ashley.
You have spoken to the school board about this before, but I'd love for you to share with everyone your concerns about VRS and possibilities that are out there for our employees in their retirement.
Well, let me just start by VRS, for those not familiar with it, is the Virginia Retirement System. And it is a defined benefit plan in the days of the very few private organizations, private companies offer defined benefit plans. Defined benefit being when you reach a certain age with this many years and doing this kind of thing. Sorry, Jimmy.
Sorry.
My director said, you're going to stay behind the podium or you're going to wander around like you usually do. And I'm like, I'll try to stay behind the podium. And so what happens is we're on the hook. We're on the hook. The Virginia Retirement System, you know, backed by the taxpayers of Virginia. So we are on the hook for this defined benefit plan that is increasingly, you know, more and more folks are living longer. They're retiring at their retirement ages, but they're living a lot longer, and the strain is showing. And for those that have 401k plans, or like I like to call them now, 301k or 201k, depending on what stocks you invested in and how you made your investments, VRS is no different. VRS has actuaries that invest their money, that you know, lay out the investment patterns, and quite frankly, they've done very, very well in a market that's not done so well. But very, very well in a declining market means you're trying to sustain and not take hits. And so what we find ourselves in is a very much underfunded position right now. In other words, our obligations exceed our ability to pay, or will exceed our ability to pay in the out years. And so do we wait till we become an Illinois or California, or do we do something about it? Well, we did something about it for state employees. We said, cough up 5% of your pay. It's going into the VRS system as a means to try to do that, because up till now, any new funding that went to VRS came from a check out of the general fund to VRS. And we're saying that's not sustainable too, particularly in light of some of the things. Nobody's asked me about Obamacare and the impact of the state, but it's a leading question or a leading thought if somebody wants to ask me later on. But you know, you're in that situation. So what you may not know is VRS is not just for state employees, but we also make it available to both local employees, city employees, as well as school board employees. And I believe Virginia Beach city employees are eligible, are in it, right? As well as school board members. So all the public employees for the city of Virginia Beach are also in our Virginia retirement system. Well, we have not laid that big offer for the city and local employees and school board employees, the same 5% that we ask of state employees. Now, what we were able to do with state employees is actually, through two different measures, increase their pay by 5%, so their net pay was zero. Their net out of pocket was zero. Technically, they got a 2 or 3% raise, and there were some things we were able to do with a Social Security thing that allowed us to keep that employee at the same level, but in effect take 5% of the pay. And obviously, it applies to any new employee and moving forward. I carried a bill last year that would have made it an option to allow localities to do that, because localities are required to write that check. And the state doesn't write the check for Virginia Beach or the school board. The school board is required to write their check to the VRS as the employee part, as is the city. And various localities have come and said, we would like to be able to do that to try to reduce our obligation going forward and moving forward. And so you know, I've had two different requests. I will use no names. One says, give us the option. One says, oh, please make it mandatory so that we don't have to make the decision here. So, you know, I'll carry the bill again in whatever form or fashion it takes. I got a call, and I guess he wouldn't kill me if I told you. Chris Dowley called me and said he wanted to carry the same bill, because I think we got to ask our employees to contribute and not keep coming back to all the taxpayers and saying, contribute, contribute, contribute to a retirement plan without asking the employees to also make an equal contribution, because it is their retirement money, it is their future. And you have so many retirement funds, state retirement funds in insolvency right now. I think Illinois being the worst example. And you know, if you want to carry it through to its final conclusion, look at what's going on in Greece. And unless we address those kind of things, you're going to have with Greece right here in this country. We may, and certain federal programs may already be on the fast track anyway, but we don't want to have that happen, and so we're going to try to move forward, and we're going to extend at least the ability to local governments to be able to do the same thing we're doing right now. I'm going to cut it short because I'm unopposed on the 8th. Or Kenny, one more question, because
Yeah,
I see our candidate is here.
Yes, and I just wanted to say before we take the last question from Paul, are there any students in the audience that would like to ask the senator a question? Okay, last question, Frank, is from Paul.
All right, Paul.
I probably don't need the mic. The question I've got, and I've heard this from delegates, has the city of Virginia Beach City Council been lobbying you against the eminent domain amendment?
No, they have not. I will say that we had a kind of a briefing on the preliminary, I'll emphasize that, proposed legislative agenda, in which case within that preliminary proposed was a item that basically said, you know, we need to modify, change, or somehow mess with this eminent domain program. You know, during that meeting, I think the representatives from City Council as well as the City Manager pretty much got a clear definition of how folks feel about that, and took it back. And then, yesterday did I get my new approved 10-to-1 legislative agenda package, and it was not in there. And so no direct lobbying, and it got the proposed legislative agenda yesterday in the mail. I haven't read it entirely, but that item was not in there. So your answer to your question is no.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Senator Wagner.